Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so glad to see you like looking good, fresh, well put together after what has been probably the 40 most can I say the 40 most intense days of your life so far?
100%. Physically, mentally, psychologically, on so many different levels.
So I'm gonna now give a little background into sort of who you are from my perspective, and then I'm obviously very keen on learning and hearing more about all the things that you've seen and done these last 40 days, but also kind of previously what led you to actually becoming sort of the explorer that you are today. So we're here today with Matt Wallace. He is an explorer. He's a lover of reptiles and a lover of the jungle. He's originally from Scotland, but after doing stints in exotic places around the world, especially Mexico, he fell in love with the country of Suriname. For those of you who don't know, Suriname is a country in South America that is on the north of Brazil, and it is bordered by Guyana, French Guyana, and then across comes then Venezuela, I think, right? Those three countries are right
Yeah.
there. The interesting thing about Suriname is it is one of the greenest countries on earth. I think it has a forest coverage of 98%, and that is primary forest. That is like rainforest the way we imagine it, proper Amazon stuff. And it obviously has a lot of inhabitants that are not human. So there will be snakes, there will be spiders, there will be monkeys, there will be all kinds of birds. And Matt is going to tell us in a second what led him to participate in an expedition that took them 40 days into the real heart of the country to find a source of a river, to climb some mountains, and then kayak the river all the way down to the sea. So, Matt, a very no normal coffee. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much. That was a nice introduction. Thank you.
I've become like a fanboy of what you guys have been up to because ever since we've been introduced to our mutual friend Alexis, who we also need to give credit to because he's the one who actually mentioned that you guys were doing this crazy thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been following your every step, and we're very lucky that you guys had such, I mean, good connection. You know, that you guys had a connection, and that you could post and share from this adventure that you were on. So, tell me a little bit about sort of Matt Wallace before Suriname, and then Matt Wallace in Suriname. We're really keen on learning more about you as a person.
Yeah. Well, I would say that there's two very different people there. Matt Wallace in Europe, in Scotland, in civilization is not the same person as in this part of the world. And for me, like when I was growing up, I really had this, I don't know, this restlessness. I had this feeling that I should be somewhere else. That I just had this burning desire to see remote parts of the world, especially in the tropics. And I think a lot of it came from the documentaries I was watching, especially I remember there was one specific documentary that was an expedition in Papua New Guinea. It was called Lost Land of the Volcano by the BBC. And after I watched that, I just became obsessed with the idea of being in the jungle for a long time with very little, very, very basic conditions, going through that hardship and having the chance to see things that maybe have never been seen before. So for me, I think that was a big catalyst from a very early age. I was like 7 years old at this point, and all I wanted to do was go to the tropics. And I actually had the chance to go for the first time in 2018, where I went to Guyana. So actually just next door to where I am now. And the funny thing is, it was actually the first country I ever traveled to alone. It was the first plane flight that I ever took alone. And as soon as I landed, like when the heat and the humidity hit me, I was like, this is it. I found where I'm supposed to be. This is where I belong.
So then you arrive for the first time on the South American shores. You're looking around, it smells different, it feels different, it sounds different, but you're still very much in the city, I'm guessing. When came that first kind of trip into the jungle, and how far did you go? Was it a gradual sort of trajectory into the wild, or did you really just go into the deep end and say, I'll figure this out?
In my case, it was pretty much straight into the deep. So I went to Guyana as part of a really cool program that's run where students can gain experience doing research in different tropical countries. And I chose Guyana because it was described as being the most remote and the most basic program that they ran. So in my case, I landed in Guyana. I had 1 day in the capital in Georgetown, which was already amazing. I saw manatees, I saw some snakes in around the city. But then we had a full day of driving into the interior, and then we had a long boat drive. So I went from landing to being in the middle of the Irocrama, like nature area, which is one of the most pristine areas of Guyana. And so it was not a gradual process of acclimatization at all. It was just straight into the middle of nowhere. And it was tough physically. I mean, being from Scotland, I mean, the same as Switzerland, we don't have to deal with the heat and the humidity and the mosquitoes. And my body was a little bit like, what's going on? Our genes are not designed for this climate, these conditions. But I loved it. I loved every single second. And I would not have done it any differently. Going straight into the deep end immediately had me hooked. It was the best possible way to do it.
And when you go now, so you go into the jungle, into kind of the real places where not many people have ventured in before, you're going to be surrounded immediately by this life that you've never experienced, right? That is not human, that is animal, that is forest. What sort of emotions did you feel as you started seeing all these different animals? And you have a specific kind of love for reptiles, right? So was that something that was cultivated while you were there, or did you already go in with, snakes and lizards and, well, I guess those are the two kind of main ones that you would encounter?
So it's interesting. I don't really know how I became so obsessed with reptiles and amphibians, especially snakes, because in Scotland, we only have one species and they're not that interesting, really. So it wasn't like I was surrounded by them that often, but I was always fascinated by them. So when I had the chance to see them in the wild, that 100% just solidified that obsession that I had. But in Guyana, I think the moment that really set alight that passion, it wasn't actually with a snake. It was with my first ever Cayman. And I remember, I'm never going to forget this. I was walking along the side of the Essequibo River, and I have a really, really shitty headlight. Now I have the best headlights you can get. But at that time, it was a really, really cheap one that I got as a gift before I went. And I was shining along the bank, and I see this little faint eye shine in the distance. And then I remember watching a documentary where they described the eye shine of the Caymans. So I was sneaking closer and closer, and what I saw from a distance was only one side of the head. So basically with Caymans, you can tell how big they are based on the eye shine, because if you only see one, the eyes are very close together because it's a small head. But if you see two eyes, it's a wide head. And I went around the corner and I could see two very, very clear eyes. And it was like a 3-meter black caiman, the first caiman I ever saw. Like a living dinosaur right there. And I was like, oh my God, I'm actually here. I have caiman. It's real. It's like everything I've been dreaming of.
So you didn't bolt the other way when you saw those reflections?
No.
You wanted to go closer.
Yeah, I was getting closer and closer. And actually, this one was kind of habituated to people because they clean the fish there. So they actually throw in fish crabs. So I was able to get within a few meters, and I was laying there for hours just staring at it. And even when I went back into my bed under my mosquito net, sweating, I was just like, oh my God, did that really happen? And and since then, I've seen thousands of Cayman, but that first one I will never forget. It was really, that was that moment of realization, like I'm actually here. It really exists. Because when you're in Scotland, when you're in Europe, all these things seem so far removed. The jungle, caimans, snakes, endless jungle. It's hard to really believe that it's out there until you see it for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point as well, because we romanticize the jungle quite a bit here
Yeah.
because of all the children's stories that we have and the images that we see. But when you actually speak with people who travel to the jungle frequently, they will often tell you quite the opposite, that, it's not a romantic place. It is a very intense place, but that it is a place where, life and death are just in your face all the time. And it takes quite some time getting used to it, that you are so exposed to just, and you're gone. But then there's the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen in your life. So it's quite an interesting kind of paradox, I assume, to be in that environment. I now want to ask you, obviously, about the expedition that you've just been a part of. So, again, for those of you who don't know, so Matt was part of a group of 4 explorers who decided that it was time to break some records, to have some new entries in the Guinness Book of Records, to find the source of a specific river, climb some mountains, and then kayak all the way down that river from source to sea in a very short amount of time. I would like to give Matt the opportunity to tell us about sort of how it came to be, what the motivations behind it were, who he did this with. And then we're going to look at a few pictures that Matt was kind enough to share with us, which he will also tell us a little bit more what the context was and what led to the pictures being taken and what they meant. So, Matt, if you would indulge us a little bit about your recent adventure.
Yeah, so this trip it's now been over a year in the planning. Actually, it was like a year and a half from the initial idea. So essentially, I was at a point where I'd been in Suriname now for about a year, and I felt like I'd gained a pretty decent amount of experience in the jungle. I know how to take care of myself. I know how to feed myself. I know how to navigate. I've learned a lot of skills, and I should say that a lot of these skills that I've been lucky enough to get is purely from the fact that I have such good friends who are from this country. The indigenous people, they have been so open to sharing that knowledge, and that's the super cool thing for me. I don't feel like an outsider in Suriname. Like when local people see how much I love the jungle and how much I want to learn, like how they catch the fish their way, they really want to teach you. So for me, a big part of this trip was I wanted to do these people proud. I wanted to show them, like, you taught me these skills, and now I'm going to go put them in practice and see if I'm actually able to do what you guys do on a daily basis, So for me, there was a big part of that. And of course, I've always wanted to do a crazy adventure. It wasn't about the record. The record was a nice bonus. But for me, I just wanted to disappear into the jungle for as long as possible and put all these skills into play. And a big motivation too was that I see that so many people who come here, they tell me how incredibly special Suriname is. I mean, I actually have only seen the jungles of Mexico, Guyana, and now Suriname. So globally, I have not seen that much of the jungle. And from what I experienced, to me, the jungles here, I think in some ways I'm a little blasé because I don't see what the jungles are like in Peru or in Costa Rica. And people tell me that this area is so incredibly unique in the sense that it's super, like you say, it's 93% jungle coverage. So incredibly well preserved. There's hardly any people here. There's areas where animals have never seen people. So I really feel this duty to share this amazing country with the rest of the world because I want more people to know about it. I want to have more tourism to give the government reason to keep it this way. So those were some of the motivating factors. If we can do an expedition that's going to get a lot of media coverage, that's going to put Suriname on the map, it's going to show its biodiversity, the importance of keeping it that way. And of course, personal things like having this amazing adventure that I've always dreamed of and getting to try these skills that I've been learning and as a way to kind of show my jungle teachers, the local people, that you've been, like, how grateful I am to now that I have the skills to go and do something like this. So that was the main motivations behind wanting to get this off the ground.
And so you work together with a Dutch guy named Dick in Suriname. You have an adventure company together, if I understand correctly. Or
so it's Dick's company. It's Dick and Lika. So they're both from the Netherlands. And I was lucky enough to come to Suriname and start working with them at a time that everything started to kick off. They'd been grinding incredibly hard to get the tours going, to get some publicity. And I came in just as everything started to blow up. So for me, it worked out perfectly. And they are amazing people. And I get a lot of opportunities to have my say in what kind of tours we can do. And they're really amazing people to work with. Really great friends of mine.
Yeah, it looks from previous stuff that they've done as well, that they've posted on their sites, that they're very familiar with the jungle. Two more guys that joined from the UK, one Jacob Hudson and one Ash Dykes. Yeah. And from what I could tell, so Jacob is primarily, or was on this tour, obviously part of the crew, also responsible for a lot of the content, a lot of the sort of the imagery, and sort of the creation and the distribution of capturing the moments. Mm-hmm. And Ash Dykes is an explorer. I think he's quite an accredited and quite a sort of achieved explorer, if you can say. He's done a lot of stuff. Do you know if this was sort of a first for Jacob and for Ash to be in the jungle like this? Or was this something that they've also done previously?
So for Jacob, it was the first time he'd done an expedition like this for so long. He has been to the jungle before, but never so basic and not for so long. So for him, it was a bit of a steep learning curve. He had his challenges, but he did incredibly well considering he had very little experience. And it's always something I tell people in the beginning, like it's funny how the jungle forces you to adapt. Even if you hate it in the beginning, you find your way to make it work. And if you're open and you allow yourself to just embrace the chaos and the unknown, it actually becomes the most freeing environment ever. That's why I love it so much. I mean, all you have to worry about is, where am I going to hang my hammock? I just need to find 2 trees. Which fish am I going to eat tonight? Are we going to have a starry sky? Is it going to be cloudy?
You make it sound very easy.
Well, you know what? The jungle is not as intense as people think. Not all the time. I mean, especially when you're on the river. If you have your system and you put certain habits and certain routines into place, you can actually be very comfortable in the jungle. Obviously, that's not always the case, but it's not this brutal environment that people always think it is. I mean, there are times that it is, but it can also be a very beautiful and amazing place to be in. But in the case of Ash, yeah, he's done some crazy stuff. He's walked the entire length of the Yangtze River, walked across Mongolia. He had been in the jungles of Thailand, but it was actually the first time he'd ever been to the South American continent. So this was a totally new experience for him as well. But he really did very well. He took it in his stride, and I think he's very happy now that he can tick off a jungle expedition.
Yeah, I mean the content that got out from him and from Jacob and from you was just so impressive all the time. You could really feel like you were almost there. The good, the bad, the ugly. It was just all very raw and very immediate. I think that's so impressive. Because when you're used to reading about explorers and adventurers, you find out about their stories from their diaries. and that can be years later. In some cases of the early explorers, centuries later, you find their diaries and you read about them. So this was so nice to be like, as somebody who grew up loving sort of Indiana Jones and the Jungle Book and all the Kipling books and sort of explorer stories, it was nice to be so involved. Like, it really made you feel like you were there. But on that note, I think now is a good time to maybe segue into the pictures, because we are in the headspace now. We are in Suriname. We are in the jungle. So if it's okay with you, then I'm going to start showing the images now, and I'll just let you run through the pictures. Yeah.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. Let's open them up. All right, sharing my screen. Let's make this big. All right.
Here we go.
So, first picture, a helicopter. What happened here?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. This was the moment that the expedition became real. I mean, so just for context, the way that we arrived was on a tiny little shelf of rocks on the upper headwaters of the Copanama River. So the goal was to try and get as far upriver as possible to reduce the amount of time we have to drag the kayaks. So we got landed on this very precarious area with a lot of slippery rocks. And it all happened so fast. We land, there's literally water inside the helicopter, by the way. Like the pilot's feet and his trousers are wet. So we touched down and we rushed to get our dry bags, all our gear out. And I'm just going through my head, okay, I've got this bag, I got this, okay, yeah, I've got everything. And you get out the way, we're walking through the river with our bags. And then, without warning, the helicopter starts to rise up again. And then you hear the sounds of the propellers getting more and more distant as it disappears. And then you're just left with the sound of the cicadas, of the birds, of the flowing water. And this moment we had that we just turned to look at each other. We're like, oh shit, okay, it's real. Yeah. We are now alone, and you are so incredibly remote out there. I mean, I really can't emphasize enough how remote this area is. There are very few places in Suriname. There's very few places actually in the world that you can be so far away from other people. The closest communities were hundreds and hundreds of miles away in every direction. It was just us four, the jungle, and all the wildlife. So it was a super, super cool feeling.
How many trips in total did the helicopter do with your gear?
It did 2. So
you fit everything. Okay.
Yeah. So Dick and Jacob arrived first. They were there for about 4 or 5 hours, and then myself and Ash took the second flight. And that was amazing to be flying in and seeing Dick and Jacob already there. And actually, as soon as we arrived, Dick already had a big anyumara, a wolffish, that he caught, like just behind the rocks that we landed with a helicopter. So he was already ready. He had lunch.
Getting ready for dinner.
Yeah, it was great.
All right. So the helicopter flies away. You're left kind of to your own devices. And now you are
PTSD.
Climbing up a river. Don't get to say that very often.
Yeah, this you know what? When I look back at these pictures, this particular image doesn't necessarily do it justice, but what we did those days was insanity. I never want to do that again. There's a lot of aspects I want to do again, but these days is not one of those things. So essentially we had to drag our kayaks, what we estimated would be about 15 kilometers, to a point that then we could start hiking. But we thought, we can be kayaking maybe half the time, and then there's some shallow sections we have to drag our boat. But it very quickly became walking the entire day, and the river got pretty deep in some sections. So you're dragging a kayak, which itself weighs 25 kilos, plus bags, plus water that gets inside. So it's weighing anywhere between 80 to 90 kilos. And you're pulling it against the current you're up to your waist in water sometimes, and you're slipping over rocks. Sometimes you go forward and the current washes you back. And we're doing this all day for a total of 4 days. And actually, this was the stage of the expedition that if a serious injury was going to happen, it would have been these days. The amount of times that we would slip and barely miss smashing our faces off rocks, or your ankle getting stuck between boulders. We did amazing to not get any injuries those days.
So you were lucky in the sense that you were also, I mean, you could probably only do this during the dry season, I assume, like this type of expedition.
Yeah, so actually the reasoning behind doing it in dry season is for the helicopter drop, because we were relying on a sandbank or rocks for the helicopter to land. If the water was higher, this would have been easier, of course, because we could kayak more. But also,
yeah, but you would have more current against you. Like that would have been three times the effort. Yeah.
True.
I read, or maybe that was in the beginning, before going, I think, in one of the social media channels, Ash Dykes was saying that if you can't find the riverbank, you're going to have to jump in.
Yeah.
So I guess that would have been easier with a bit more water, right? That you could just jump in, and the rest is difficult.
Yeah, I was also kind of hoping for that, Would have been a very dramatic start.
Yeah, would have made for a good picture for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now look at these two smiling faces.
What a moment this was. Yeah, so this is myself and my colleague and good friend, Dick Locke. And this is at least one of the sources of the Copanama River. So obviously we can't say that this is the source, because probably there are several. But essentially what we did was we chose the widest tributary that we could find, and we followed it until it disappeared. So that's why we were saying that this is the source of the Recta Copanama River, because it was, from what we see, the tributary that is contributing the most amount of volume into the river downstream. So this took us in total almost 10 days to find. These days working towards this were some of the most brutal days of the entire expedition. I mean, hiking the entire day on little to no food. And the amount of times we'd be walking and we're like, yeah, the river's getting smaller. Maybe we're getting close. And then you round the corner and suddenly it's wide again. And you're like, no, there's supposed to be less water now. But yeah.
The machete in hand, I assume you had to do a lot of clearing, right?
Yeah,
there was
a lot.
No way to get through it without just hacking your way through some really thick jungle.
So it goes two ways. You use the machete, obviously, to clear your path, because sometimes you physically can't move forward without the use of a machete. But it's also to find your way back, because it's very easy to start just walking, and then you turn around and you're like, okay, but which way did we come from? Because we do have a GPS system, but it's not accurate enough to follow the exact trail back. So what you do is you make small cuts on the trees. You just remove a piece of the bark, and then you can follow your trail back. But this picture is showing you the place that this tributary is actually coming out of the ground. And this was a crazy moment because, we're here drinking from this stream. We can step over the Copanama River. And we know that we didn't know exactly how long, but we would be going into the sea from this point. Like somehow this turns into a river that is almost 2 kilometers wide, where it joins the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, it was just like, how?
Yeah, and especially during the dry season, right? Because the water levels don't drop that much, I guess, right? So you have essentially just source-fed river that just grows and grows.
But also daunting.
That's super impressive. So that's the first milestone done then, right? So you found a source to the Copenhagen River. You are going to map this now. And then we're moving on to, I think, what is the highest peak of Suriname?
So this is Juliana Top, highest mountain in Suriname, 1,280 meters at its highest point. The disappointing thing with this mountain is when you're at the top, there's no view. So we this day we hiked for 16 hours from our base camp to get to the top and to get back. And the last kilometer, we were hacking through vines, and the final ascent is elephant grass. And elephant grass is incredibly thick. It's like 3 meters above your head. A machete doesn't even work at that point. I was literally just bulldozing my way through, like crawling on the ground. And then you reach the summit, and you're standing in this little clearing with trees above your head. So actually, we used the drone to make these shots, of course. And that's when we got to see, like, wow, we really are on a mountain, because it's hard to appreciate that when you're under the canopy and you're surrounded by this vegetation. But that climb was that day, I think, was one of, if not the hardest of the whole expedition, because we had about, let me see, we worked it out. I think we had less than 600 calories for the whole day, and we hiked for 16 hours over boulder fields, up very, very steep ascents, through bamboo, through elephant grass, and we were walking back down the mountain, zombies. Like, we had nothing in the tank left anymore. But yeah, that was a crazy, crazy ascent. But yeah, that was our second goal, was to reach the summit.
I mean, I can only imagine what it must feel like to hike 16 hours through some of the most grueling terrain to get to the top of the mountain. And when you get to the top of the mountain, you don't have a view. That's such a bummer. That's such a bummer, because that is the thing you envision, though. Like, you go up and you think, when I'm up there, I'll have a view over all of this. And you didn't get that. What a shame. But you took a drone with you, I see, and you had you got some nice pictures nonetheless.
This was pictures from Dick, and he did the most crazy drone flying ever, maneuvering the drone to get just out of the canopy, making the shots, flying it back in. That's when you could really appreciate the landscape we were in. Because actually, a lot of times it's quite claustrophobic. You know, you're under the canopy, you forget how incredible this landscape is, and that we're around mountains, because all you see is this layer of green above your head.
Yeah. How tall is the canopy in those forests in Suriname?
Really depends. It depends whether you're in the, like, even on this mountain, for example, if you're on the base of the mountain as opposed to the top. But I would say on average, you're looking around 30 to 40 meters.
Okay, that's tall. Yeah, I can see how you could get claustrophobic.
Yeah,
down there. So I guess this picture sums up the mood, huh? That day.
Yeah, I think this is my favorite picture from the entire expedition. So yeah, it really says 1,000 words. So after Juliana Top, the next goal was to climb Table Mountain, which is the second highest mountain in Suriname. And there's one side of the mountain that you're able to climb, because as the name suggests, it's a table mountain, it's a tepui. So basically it's a flat top with vertical sides all around, except from North Ridge. And North Ridge is how we were able to climb. It's also how all the animals are able to get on the mountain. You have jaguars up there, you have tapirs up there. So we were successful in climbing onto the top of the mountain, which was an amazing achievement in itself. But the second goal was to reach the summit of Table Mountain, which again, it's a flat mountain that essentially has a little bump on the far end. That's the highest point. But it did not work out. It was, I thought I knew what impenetrable jungle was. I thought I'd experienced that. This is literally like, I don't know if you've seen Lord of the Rings, when Frodo is stuck in the spider web of this giant spider.
Yeah, of course.
And it was like that. You're enclosed in bamboo and in vines, and to move 10 meters maybe takes you 5 minutes, maybe even longer. And this was the moment that we realized we only have a day of food left, and at the pace we're making, it's going to take us at least 5 to 7 days. And our final hope was we actually were able to make a satellite call to someone that we believed had made it to the summit. So we called them like, hey, the route we're taking is horrible. It's physically not possible with the time that we have. Can you suggest another route? And they said, oh, no, I wasn't able to make it. Yeah, we failed 100 meters from the summit. Could you imagine how hard it must be that you give up and you're only 100 meters away? So it was, that is the moment we're like, guys, it's not going to work out. It's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your faces, it is, first of all, credit to, I guess this is Jacob Hudson who took this picture. The credit to him for capturing this moment. But yeah, you do look absolutely devoid of any form of motivation, happiness. Yeah. Endorphins are gone. Yeah, no, you're at a low point here. Mm-hmm. So then, well,
there we go.
We don't want to say this is product placement, right? But so then you get to a moment where you get to have a view on top of a mountain and you get to have a cup of coffee. How did this one come to be, this picture?
So this is after we agreed that the summit's not going to work. We returned back to base camp. So essentially on the east side of Table Mountain, we have a small camp. When I say a camp, it's a tin roof made with wooden poles, and it's been there for a long, long time. And that's where we were planning to spend 2 nights to recover. So that's what we did. We went back there. We were sleeping under this roof. And then this is August Falls, which is a really, really beautiful waterfall just a few minutes away from there. And this was the first day off that we had. So I went into the creek there. It's nice cold water. I washed my hair. I shaved a little bit. I washed my clothes, and I sat there and I enjoyed my first cup of coffee for 2 weeks at this point. And then I was really able to just recover and really soak in what we'd been achieved already. Because when you're in the moment, when you're grinding that hard, sometimes there's actually very little enjoyment in the moment. It's secondary enjoyment. It's only afterwards you're like, wow, that was amazing. But in the moment, you're like, this is fucking horrible.
Yeah, you're purely thinking of survival, right? I mean, getting done, getting there, and then all of a sudden you have a moment to really take it all in and relax, and you're safe, and you can appreciate the beauty again. You know, that's the big one here. So, I need to ask, right? Obviously, because we are No Normal Coffee. So, did it deliver? Did it help you on your adventure, not just in this moment, but on other moments as well?
Honestly, it became one of the most important items in my rucksack. The amount of times it really, I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying that. Like when you're hiking, you don't have the time to make a fire, to cook food, and our rations were not enough. We cut our food in half, and there were some days, again, we'd be hiking. We just can't spare a bag of nuts. So instead, for lunch or as an energy boost, we would just sit there on the ground, covered in ticks. We would just pass around the coffee tube, take it on our finger, have it as the paste. It was like chocolate energy paste, and it was always an amazing moment. Everyone would be smiling, you know. It's like, is it coffee time? We're like, yeah, it's coffee time. We just take it on our finger, but this was the first time that I was able to enjoy it as a coffee with hot water. Prior to that, it was always on as the paste. But honestly, I think I prefer in the paste. Maybe I didn't add enough to the water, but I think the flavor you get more as the paste, and it made a huge difference. So thank you really for sending those.
I'm very happy that they were able to kind of help you in these dark moments. You know, it's a product that we developed especially for these kinds of situations where, you know, you are out, you are on an adventure, you don't have your comforts of home with you, but, you know, coffee is something so present in our lives that every time you just have that smell of coffee or you have a sip of coffee, it just brings back so many nice memories and moments that you've experienced with coffee that it's almost become like a comforting experience, you know, like you're actually, even though if it's an invigorating drink, it helps you relax in a sense as well. You're like, oh yeah, life is okay. Yeah. Like I'm alive. It's good. Like there's coffee.
Yeah. I think that's okay. It's a very good point. It's beyond the caffeine itself. It's like you say, it's something familiar. It's good for the soul. So it goes 2 ways.
It's good for the soul. We're going to put that in our next advert for sure. So it looks like you left the mountain behind you.
We have food again.
A lot of food.
Yeah. So once we were off the mountain, we were back onto the river, and this is when we were just recovering. We were able to supplement our rations with fish now. So this is the wolffish, anyumara, as they call it in Suriname. And this was one of the most abundant fish that you can find in these rivers. And they are the apex predator of the rivers in Suriname. People think that the piranha is the top fish predator. Not at all. These are the rulers of the river. And
they also eat crabs and shells and stuff, or only fish? Or do they eat frogs and spiders and everything?
These eat everything. An anyumara of this size will eat birds. It'll eat small mammals. It eats iguanas. It eats anything that falls into the water. There's even stories of them, biting people's limbs. I had them biting my paddles as I was kayaking. I was kayaking through some rapids, and and you can even see like scratch marks on the paddle from one of these fish grabbing it.
That's aggressive. That's pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
So this, I assume this would go on the barbie, on the fire, right? This fish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you finish this all in one go? Basically, was that the level of how hungry you were?
Honestly, we were not even able to. We were starving, but this is like 15 kilos of meat.
Yeah. So this is a lot.
So this was dinner and also breakfast the following morning. But I'll be honest, cold fish first thing in the morning was not amazing, but we got it down as it was fuel. But yeah, with this, you take the scales off, you use the machete, you cut it into sections, and then we roasted it. We made a little rack with straight sticks, and then we roasted it for a few hours, added some herbs, and that was it. Dinner made.
You can make a marinade with no normal coffee as well. I'm just letting you know next time.
Yeah, next time I should.
With some coffee paste. Hey, it's an option. We've done some barbecue stuff.
Okay, that's good to
know.
So
this is your setup. This is your crib then in the jungle.
Yeah, this is it. So it's funny how everyone gets their own system, their own routine of how they set up their hammock. Little details, whether you even simple things like if you hang your towel up on the line itself, or do you put it over your hammock? It's cool to see how people arrange their own house essentially, because this was our house for almost 40 days. So we have the hammock itself with the mosquito net. You have the tarpaulin over the top for rain, which we actually didn't get too much because it was dry season. But it's also just to it's another sense of comfort if you have that little extra layer of protection.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we put all our gear underneath on the ground there. I have a little ground sheet, so when I get into my hammock at night, my feet are still clean. And then that's our system. Every single day, we pack it up, we go to a new place, we tie it to 2 new trees. And in the beginning, you're kind of faffing around. It takes you some time. Maybe it takes you like 10, 15 minutes. By the end, it's just like in 2 minutes, you're done. It becomes second nature. You don't even think about it.
I mean, these are also, just by looking at this, these are some perfect trees to tie a hammock around, right? They're like the perfect width. It's just like the perfect setup. This could be on Pinterest. Yeah,
but also what's funny, when it was never really said, but when we arrive at a spot, everyone always rushes into, like, you want to claim the best trees first, So you arrive and you just immediately say, you're like, you would go up, like Dick would claim this tree, or like Ash would run over and like, this is my spot. It's funny how that becomes the game. You arrive at a new spot, it's like, okay, got to find my spot before someone else takes it.
Oh my God. Did you ever have any unwanted crawling visitors in these situations?
Plenty, but not big ones. The big animals are not the problem. It's the ants. It's army ants. Several times we had the swarms of army ants come through the whole of camp, covered all our gear, inside our hammocks, and there's nothing you can do. We just stand in the river and wait for them to pass. There's nothing that you can do. There's too many. There's millions of them.
Are they looking for food, or are they just curious?
They're looking for food. So you have two ways that the army ants move. Either you have them in a straight line, which is a column that's just moving, because army ants have to move regularly because they are so effective in the way that they forage. that they actually eat everything and they have to just move to a new area of jungle. So when you see them in a straight line, that's them having cleared out an area and now they're moving to another spot. But in our cases, we had the foraging swarms where there's not a system, they're just going everywhere. So in the moment, it's kind of annoying, but afterwards, you have a camp that has 0 insects anymore. No more spiders, no more cockroaches. Everything was eaten. And you just...
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, no scorpions. And you just see little parts of lizards or a scorpion tail being carried along this trail of ants. They just rip everything apart.
Housekeeping. You may have to wait outside your room, but housekeeping.
Exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned scorpion there. I think I want to touch upon that. No pun intended, but I think there was an encounter at some point. But I'll let you tell us about that. This is another fun creature that can potentially end your day. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me talk about this first. So the stingray. Actually, I should point out that the stingrays that we find on the Kopanama River were recently found to be a different species, and they're also endemic to this river. Nowhere else in the world do you find this species of stingray, only on the Kopanama River. So that is super cool. And they really are living fossils. I mean, they've been around for over 100 million years, but these were one of the biggest threats to us during the expedition while we're on the river, because of course they're stingrays. They have barbs on their tail, which are tipped with a really potent venom. And if you stand on one by accident, which is very easy to do, you see their color. And also this one is very obvious. Most of them are partially or almost completely covered in sand. They shuffle their fins so the sand gets on top. And if you stand on one, they're gonna stab their tail into usually your lower limb. And the barbs are also very, very, they're very long. So when they go in, they also rip a hole. So not only do you have venom in there, you also have a very high risk of secondary infection. So we were always having to be super, super aware. And when we're in the water, like shuffling our feet, and some areas had obscene amounts of stingrays. Like 20 or 30 on one sandbank. It was crazy. I never saw a density of stingray like that. It's insane.
I mean, it's a really good sign for the biodiversity and the health of the river, right? That you have these species in such abundance. But no barefoot hiking in the water there. Huh?
No, not at all. But yeah, like you say, it's super cool to see that they're in such high numbers, because they are endemic and they are potentially a threatened species. We really don't know.
It's just magnificent to see these species there. And I wasn't, to be completely honest with you, because we read a lot about stingrays and manta rays, and they're always in the oceans. And so for me also to see these pictures, it really brought it back, like, wow, they do exist. There are these freshwater stingrays.
Yeah.
That's just beautiful creatures. Now,
this is it. This was the
Can we call this cat the king of the jungle or the queen of the jungle? Is it for Suriname? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I think for the whole of the Amazon, this is the king of the jungle, 100%. Yeah. This was a moment.
Looking angry.
Yeah, you know what? I like that you say that, because you're looking in the eyes. You can't help but look at the eyes. They have such intensity in the way that they look. For all cats, it's different when you encounter a big cat to another animal, a tapir or something like that. They're still big animals, but there's something at the way that a cat looks at you. It looks through you. It's different. It's not looking at you like it's scared. It's like, can I eat you? It's like, it really looks, you feel it. It goes right through you.
Yeah. You see it and you think, yeah, I'm done if this goes wrong. Like that's just it basically, right? But you saw this cat as you were kayaking.
Yeah, it was the hottest part of the day. It was I think it was like 3:15 p.m. and we're kayaking, and it was so fortunate that I looked up when I did. My head was kind of down, I was suffering with the heat, and I looked up, and from about 300 meters away, I saw this animal just slowly walking along the bank, and immediately I knew exactly what it was. I saw the spots. And it was funny, like me and Dick had been developing these hand gestures, so that we could tell each other what we see without shouting. And Jaguar was this. There was not even a split second that I was like, oh yeah, I need to do this. I was just like, Jaguar, Jaguar, Jaguar. And yeah,
everything you learned out the window. Yeah,
it was gone. It was gone immediately. Yeah. And so initially we saw it from 300 meters away, but we were able to get within 20 meters, and it just stood there, no fear, just curious. And then at some point it became bored with us, and it stood up and very slowly walked away. But that was the moment we were all been dreaming of the whole expedition. My best Jaguar sighting ever.
What would you say? This is like a full adult Jaguar?
Yeah.
Juvenile?
This is a fully grown, and we think it's a female. I think it's a fully grown female, because we also played some Jaguar sounds, and it seemed to be pretty curious, but also it didn't have it was big, but it didn't have the shape of a male, Males are even more thickly set. But it's been through the wars. If you look at the face closely from the image, I don't know if you can from there, but you see that its right ear, it's torn. It's got scarring on its nose, and this is probably from interactions with other jaguars, or even from prey. Peccary, capybara. So it's a tough life they have. These are not easy animals to catch, and they fight back. If you imagine grabbing a peccary with your face, this thing has big, sharp teeth. They're very, very powerful. So they lead a very, very hard existence, jaguars.
What do you think the numbers are of jaguars in Suriname? Are they sort of well tracked, like lions in the savannah, or is it something that is still very much unknown?
Yeah, I mean, for so many things in Suriname, there's very, very little data about populations. We do know that the population is healthy. Some colleagues of mine are working on camera trapping projects, trying to figure out densities. But there's not even, as far as I'm aware, there's not even a ballpark estimation of their numbers. But I would say, compared to other countries, Suriname does have a very healthy population of jaguars. You can find them within several kilometers of the capital city of Paramaribo. Like they're extremely well connected here.
Okay. But it doesn't have sort of a symbolic status in Suriname. It's not on the flag or
no, it's not on the flag. I mean, it is revered by a lot of the local people, but unfortunately we also have a big problem now that they're being hunted for their teeth. I mean, they always have, but especially now in the past years. I think honestly, now that the tiger populations have been decreasing so much, there's been an increase in the poaching for jaguars, not just in Suriname, but across South America. So essentially, the jaguar is now filling this niche, filling the need for teeth, for fur, for parts. So it is very concerning, and we're seeing it more and more that these kind of problems are happening.
Yeah, wildlife poaching is always such a shame. Hard to understand. Although then you think again in these communities where there's next to nothing, and this is the difference between you eating for a year or just basically perishing. It's a different equation, but I'm with you there. It's just such a sad topic. Speaking of flags and sad topics, let's move on to flags and happy topics. So this looks like a reformed group of guys. What happened here?
Yeah, this is 4 starving, sunburnt, and exhausted guys who have just spent 37 days traveling from the source and now entering the Atlantic Ocean. So these last 5 kilometers really killed me. I mean, we've been paddling the whole day, and the intention was to take a break at the Kopanama Bridge, and then once the new tide turned, we would push for the final 5 kilometers to get into the sea. But actually, we arrived in such good time that we still had a short window that the tide was still going out to sea. But it was now the hottest part of the day. So we're like, it's going to be tough. But if we go now, we can just get it done. And then in a couple hours, we'll be on our way to the city with iced coffee and pizza. So we're like, okay, let's just get it done. Let's do it. And this was the moment that we officially entered the sea, you know, because it's a bit of a gray area, you know, when does the river become the estuary and when does an estuary become the sea? So we had a GPS point given from Guinness World Records that they said, like, beyond this point is the sea. And we pushed, I think, for almost another kilometer beyond that point. Because the last thing you want is people to be like, yeah, you know, you did good, but you were technically not in the sea.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you just spend 40 days in the jungle and tracking every single meter. People will come back to say, not quite.
Exactly.
You missed 10 meters, and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
No, but it's such a great picture, and obviously, you know, you with the tartan. There's a Wales flag. There's a Union Jack. There's a Suriname flag.
Yeah,
it's a really cool image of just young guys doing something really wild and out there and crazy and daring, and that just to me, as well as to kind of the people that we're in touch with, this is really what it's about. And this moment, I'm sure, was just so you know, I guess.
Yeah, you know, it what started out as an idea, then it was like, okay, now we need to get funding, and then we had funding, and then we had the team, and then we had the plan, and then we actually completed the mission. So it was all these things that just came together, and honestly, it came together so perfectly in the end. We had so many problems those last days, but everything worked out. And then the moment we finished, you know, it's still sinking in. And actually, I think it only sunk in the other day when I went back over the Copenhagen Bridge, and I was looking down. I was like, oh my God, we were there like a week ago. That's when we finished. So it's still.
And you were just there where this river actually begins.
Yeah,
like you can backtrack in your mind like every mile to the source of one of the sources.
Everything, yeah. And that's why I'm so glad we could do this call soon. So everything's still fresh in my mind. I don't want to forget any details. But I mean, even so, we've scratched the surface of what the expedition really was like.
Yeah, but so you've come out of the jungle. You've regained a few kilos that you've lost.
Plenty.
You're sitting on what looks like a comfortable chair. You're probably, I think you're outdoors, no, indoors, right?
Yeah, got a roof over my head.
How itchy are you to get back out there? And when is the next trip?
Yeah, man, I'm extremely restless already. I mean, even once we finished on the sea, I was like, man, I got to start thinking of the next thing. So it's what I love about these expeditions is how much it humbles you, and that's what I was really looking forward to. I think the last few months I've been getting a little too comfortable. I've been going back into old habits where certain things which shouldn't really bother me do, and I take things for granted. But you just come back with this new sense of appreciation for so many things, for friends, for family. Simple things like getting ice in a drink, you know, you can take your phone and stick it in the wall and it charges. You don't have to worry about it. Are we going to have enough sun to charge my phone today? And then for the next trips, I have some ideas of future expeditions in mind that I'm still working on. But I have some smaller tours to keep me busy the end of this month. But it won't be long until I'm back out doing something like this again.
You know, you just let us know when you're planning your next adventure. For sure, we will supply you with No Normal coffee. And if there's any other way that we can support your crazy, amazing adventures, you let us know. We are totally humbled and totally proud that we were able to somehow, I don't want to say contribute, but just to be a part of your rations, to be part of sort of like the high points during your days, during this expedition now. So from myself, as well as from Alex and from Elena and from everyone around us, you know, congratulations. Awesome stuff. Really, really awesome stuff. Can't wait to learn more. And for everybody that is watching, we will be posting some really cool images that Matt has taken on this trip that haven't been published yet. So you can go to our social channels as well as our website, where there will be a blog post about this adventure as well, with all this unseen content. Thank you very much, Matt. I wish you a great day, and I hope we get to catch up again soon.